May is Preservation Month, so we thought we'd take this opportunity to look a little closer at the history of preservation and meet some of the women involved in the shaping of preservation, particularly on Aquidneck Island in Rhode Island. Historic preservation as a field is a relatively modern one. The first national policy in the United States was established in 1966 with the passage of the National Historic Preservation Act. The act created the National Register of Historic Places, the list of National Historic Landmarks, and state historic preservation offices. But although this policy is relatively recent, it stems from previous generations' efforts and is tied into the collective cultural conscious ideas about heritage and the meaning of places. Women have long been the keepers, the collectors of family stories, keepsakes, and memories. So it should come as no surprise that the field of preservation is entwined with the role women played and play as preservers of the past. When we think of preservation, we often think of the physical site that encompasses the stories of people and objects. This may include a building, cemetery, or a garden. It may be altered over time. It may even move from one location to another. And our understanding of its past and the narrative surrounding it may change over time as well. Preservation involves advocacy, doing research to uncover layers of history, documenting this history, and then making an argument for why and how this should be saved. It often involves the public, who can support the project or who will be able to use or visit the site. One of the first modern projects of preservation was Mount Vernon. Founded in 1853 by Anne Pamela Cunningham, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association was the first national historic preservation organization in the United States. Led by Cunningham, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association successfully raised money to save George and Martha Washington's home from redevelopment and to restore the home. Their work has shaped generations of our understanding of the United States' colonial past and what it means to be an American, or who is an American. Another American women-led National Historic Preservation organization is the National Society of the Colonial Dames, founded in 1891. In the early decades of the organization, the preservation work of the Colonial Dames involved the meticulous practice of what we might think of as scrapbooking, by carefully selecting, cutting, and pasting information about people, places, and things into books, which then could be used as reference material. These were some of the earliest databases, and serve as an important record of what was thought to be worth saving. So now bringing the story back to Rhode Island, we can see the interconnections between women in Rhode Island in the 20th century, who may have had different backgrounds and life experiences, but all shared a passion for preservation. Antoinette Downing, a great architectural historian, relied on the Colonial Dames' collections to help craft the seminal work, The Architectural Heritage of Newport, Rhode Island, 1640 to 1915, first published in 1952. In it, she, along with her co-author, chronicled Newport through its buildings and mapped how the city changed and developed over time. Besides her work in mapping the past, Downing also was instrumental in advocating for the present cityscape in both Newport and in Providence, Rhode Island. During her work on the architectural heritage of Newport, Downing worked closely with the Preservation Society of Newport County. The PSNC was founded by Katherine Warren in 1945, and it is likely not an accident that the first building saved and preserved by the organization was the Hunter House, an example of colonial Newport architecture. Warren's leadership and advocacy shaped the PSNC into an organization that today continues the work of preservation in Newport. Warren also worked with other women who made important contributions to historic preservation, including friends Alida Morris McBean and Doris Duke. Newport was a special place for Doris Duke, and while she had many interests, one of her lasting legacies is to the field of historic preservation and to Aquidneck Island. She was involved financially in the field of preservation and the Preservation Society. And then in 1968, she established the Newport Restoration Foundation to restore and preserve the 18th century and early 19th century architectural heritage of Aquidneck Island. Today, the NRF manages over 80 historic properties, including 2 museums and 2 public outdoor sites. While some of these buildings are very grand, like Rough Point, Vernon House, and Whitehorn House, the majority are examples of vernacular architecture, or examples of the everyday homes that people lived in. This makes a statement as well that these quote-unquote common spaces are important and are important to a more nuanced and complete understanding of an American identity and heritage. Mary E Glassgow, or better known as Princess Redwing, was a Wampanoag and Narragansett woman who helped shape preservation in New England, particularly in Rhode Island. As a historian, educator, and activist, she worked to commemorate the living legacies of Indigenous peoples. Along with anthropologist Eve Butler, she established the Tamaqua Museum in 1958 to celebrate Indigenous cultural vibrancy and heritage. Today, the Tamaqua Museum in Rhode Island educates the public and promotes thoughtful dialogue regarding Indigenous history, culture, arts, and Mother Earth, and connects to current Native issues. Princess Redwing's work in preserving language, ceremonies, culture, legacy, and memories has a significant impact on the understanding of not only Rhode Island history, but also American history. A few decades after Princess Redwing and Eve Butler established the Tamaqua Museum, Rowena Stewart worked to preserve the histories, legacies, documents, and objects related to the Black lived experience in the United States. Stewart founded the Rhode Island Black Heritage Society in 1975 and was instrumental in saving, preserving, and sharing the legacies of African heritage women and men. In Newport, she was also one of the first to recognize the indelible importance of God's Little Acre, one of the oldest and largest African burying grounds in what is now the United States. Stewart's work, which continues to this day, has led to the preservation of fragile grave marker sites, along with fundraising, research, and new understandings about not only the stories of people laid to rest in the space, but also the history of Newport. The work of preservation is intricately tied into local communities. The work we do at the Newport Restoration Foundation, through Doris Duke's vision, saves not only the physical spaces, but also objects and stories. And we work to make these narratives accessible to our communities. Although preservation focuses on space from the past, it shapes the present and the future, and how people do and will live, work, worship in, and enjoy the spaces. So as we celebrate Preservation Month, we invite you to think about the spaces that are important to you and to your community, and to explore other places that you may not be as familiar with, but are a part of the history of your neighborhood, or your town, or your state. And to find out how you can support the work of preservation through the Newport Restoration Foundation, please visit us in person at Rough Point Museum, Whitehorn House Museum, and you can also visit us virtually by going to newportrestoration.org. If you would like to discover more about other stories in preservation, you can check out the National Trust for Historic Preservation site, savingplaces.org.